Light is healthy, darkness is unhealthy.
So this is obviously an extremely controversial opinion, I guess as much as all of them, because we often think of darkness as healthy, right? We think of darkness as being recuperation, rejuvenation, replenishment, recovery. We think of we hear all the time, don't have blue light, make sure, at night, make sure that you sleep in a room that's as dark as possible. And Dr. Peat actually disagreed with that to some degree. Now, I am not 100% in alignment with him about this, and there is a distinction about this as well, which is another one, which maybe we can talk about at the same time, actually, which is, red light is healthy and blue light is unhealthy. That is another one of those quotes. And so that's probably the distinction. So at night, he would say that you would want more red light, whereas during the day, you'd want more blue light, but you'd want more light in general. Now, I don't agree with him 100% about this. I feel like darkness is beneficial, and I think the conclusion that he came to here is because of his obsessive focus on metabolism.
Right. What way do you think darkness is beneficial?
He obsessively focuses on keeping metabolism high. I think trying to keep metabolism high 24 hours a day is not wise because it doesn't go along with the cycle of nature. However, he has a very compelling case for why he's right. So let's hear him out first before I give my rebuttal.
Okay. He says, women who had been healthy when they arrived would often develop premenstrual syndrome or arthritis or colitis during their first winter in Eugene.
This is like Oregon, so a cold, dark place compared to where they were before. That's the backstory for that one.
The absence of bright light would create a progesterone deficiency and would leave estrogen and prolactin unopposed. Beginning in 1966, I started calling the syndrome winter sickness, but over the next few years, because of the prominence of the premenstrual syndrome and fertility problems in these seasonally exacerbated disorders, I began calling it the pathology of estrogen dominance. In the endocrinology classes I taught at the National College of Naturopathic Medicine, I emphasized the importance of light and suggested that medicine could be reorganized around these estrogen-related processes.
So he talks a lot about this. And I think I'm not surprised it's one of his theories that hasn't caught on. I'm not surprised that sugar is good and, exercise is bad. It's been met with more popularity than, light is good and darkness is bad. It makes sense from his perspective because he has a lot of evidence. So first of all, during a period of darkness is when people are much more likely to have a serious health incident. I don't think I included that in his quotes, but that's, another point. I think 3 or 4 in the morning is by far the most likely time for people to have a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. Now, of course, some people could say there's other reasons for that, but he felt that there was a compelling connection to that, to light specifically. So basically, light stimulates increased metabolism and darkness slows down metabolism. I think that's the essence of the idea. And so as you can see from that quote, he was talking more about the seasonal variations of light than the light in the day. He was saying that there is a reason that people tend to be depressed, get more illnesses in the winter. It's not necessarily because more viruses are going around. He wouldn't say it's even because of the cold. He would say that it's because of the lack of light. And of course, there is some evidence for that. These days, we would focus more on we would blame all that on vitamin D, right? That there's less vitamin D in the winter. But from his perspective, that's extremely reductive, although he's a big fan of vitamin D. My understanding is that he was talking about is the less light in general would mean the slowing down of the metabolism in general, which would mean that there's less ATP energy being created, which means that every system in the body is less effective. The whole thing about metabolism we've already talked about a lot.
I want to ask you a question in this quote where he says the absence of bright light would create a progesterone deficiency. Now, how would that happen? Do you know what he meant by that, or what that mechanism is?
I don't know the mechanism. No. Usually, people would say that the bright light would stimulate serotonin, but he would consider serotonin a bad thing that opposes progesterone and aligns with estrogen and prolactin. So yeah, sorry, I don't know the specific mechanism that he had in mind for that. But if I had to guess, it would be related to thyroid, because as we talked about, thyroid tends to
Go down.
well, work with progesterone,
Yes.
whereas estrogen and prolactin would oppose progesterone. So he was saying that the darkness would increase the estrogen. So I guess that would be the simple answer to your question. But then, of course, the follow-up question is, well, why does the darkness increase the estrogen? And again, if I had to guess, I would guess it's through the mechanism of metabolism and thyroid, that the lack of thyroid would decrease progesterone, increase estrogen. Because he's already said that in earlier tweets, that's the correlation.
Okay. No, thank you for that distinction. And then how would this possibly play into SAD, the winter time, the seasonal affective disorder?
Totally. Yeah. As I said, that tends to be kind of put down to serotonin, but he would strongly disagree. He would say that is due to a reduced energy production. Being the key, reduced metabolism.
And then in this final quote from him on exercise, he said, very bright incandescent lights are helpful because light acts on and restores the same mitochondrial enzymes that are governed by the thyroid hormone. In squirrels, hibernation is brought on by the accumulation of unsaturated fats in the tissues, suppressing respiration and stimulating increased serotonin production. In humans, winter sickness is intensified by those same antithyroid substances, so it's important to limit consumption of unsaturated fats and tryptophan, which is the source of serotonin. When a person is using a thyroid supplement, it's common to need 4 times as much in December as in July. That's interesting.
Yes, that was his claim. The thyroid doctors that I have come across, they usually don't talk about that, although I did hear one say that, you tend to need quite a lot more in winter than summer, but I've not heard any of them say that it's that extreme in actual clinical practice. I think maybe from the highest, light and temperature to the very lowest, double might be more realistic, but I think it definitely could be significant still. And he's saying there, you want to be more careful to reduce all the thyroid and metabolism suppressing things when there is a lack of light than you would otherwise. So you're going to be able to get away with more seed oils and other things that could stimulate lack of thyroid function, like he talks about tryptophan here as a serotonin precursor. You can get away with all of that stuff more when there's light, because the light keeps the metabolism high. When the metabolism is low, you're at a lot more danger.
And that makes a lot of sense. So, that's quite interesting, the interplay with light and its effect. Is that going into the circadian rhythm at all? Is that feeding into that with the hormone structure?
Yeah, and that's why I disagree with him. I do believe what he says, that high metabolism is best, but the metabolism does reduce before you go to sleep. You can see that in the drop of temperature of about 1 degree Fahrenheit or 0.5 degree Celsius. I don't think it's beneficial to keep that metabolism stoked at exactly the same level 24 hours a day. So my understanding is that it's actually beneficial to have that period of, hibernation known as sleep, where it actually is dark and it is cool. There's a lot of evidence for that. Now, can I see his point that if you're in quite a, very north or summerly location and suddenly that hibernation period is like 18 hours a day, 18 hours of darkness a day or even more, how that would have negative health outcomes? Absolutely. So the actual point that I included the quote for, I do agree with. And in that situation, would it be a good idea to expose themselves to more light to try and boost the metabolism more and get the person into more of a summer state, so they're less than a shutdown, hibernating, slow metabolism state? Yes. Notice he says incandescent light bulbs as opposed to LEDs, because they had a much more broad spectrum of light that wasn't just the blue light. So the other thing that Dr. Peat did agree with, though I don't have quotes for it included, is that red light is beneficial and then blue light is generally not beneficial. He was more extreme about that than most. Like if you listen to Dr. Huberman, for instance, he'll talk about how it's good to have as much blue light as possible when you first wake up, and then you want to reduce it as much as possible before you go to sleep, with the idea being when you wake up, you want to stimulate cortisol as much as possible. Before sleep, you want to reduce it as much as possible, like the circadian rhythm, yin and yang, night and day, and all the rest of it. From Dr. Peat's perspective, that high cortisol is so detrimental that he would never want to spike it. So while he didn't you know, he wouldn't tell you to avoid sunlight and sunlight, of course, is a full spectrum of light, including lots of red light and ultraviolet light, which actually are beneficial. You know, one type of ultraviolet light is beneficial. All the frequencies of red light are beneficial. But I think if, you know, the idea of exposing yourself to pure blue light in the morning, like with, say, LEDs to stimulate cortisol, he would consider to be, you know, extremely bad idea. So probably during the day, natural sunlight, a full frequency of light, and then at night, because it's not natural to have any blue light, reduce the blue light as much as possible to preferably nothing. That would probably be the ideal you know, range of frequencies from his point of view. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Rejuvenate podcast. If you want to watch the full episode that came from, just click on the link above. Or if you just want to watch our latest video, then click the link below. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you.